Everything has its pros and its cons, right? So does assisted reproduction. Well, if you want to know what those pros and cons are, stick around because that's what we're talking about in today's episode. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, and I am an assisted reproduction attorney in Los Angeles. My whole practice revolves around helping people have babies through assisted reproductive technologies like surrogacy, egg donation, sperm donation, and all that good stuff. In this episode, we're going to look at the pros of assisted reproductive technologies, and we're also going to look at some of the cons of assisted reproductive technologies. And stick around to the end because I have something special just for you. Let's dive right in. So let's start with the pros, right? Give you the good news first, Doc. Everything about assisted reproductive technologies that's good is almost a no-brainer. It helps people grow their family where they otherwise wouldn't be able to. So let's run through a few of the benefits of ART or assisted reproductive technologies. The first benefit that I love is that it works where other treatments fail. Many people who embark down the road of assisted reproduction, whether that's with IVF for themselves or through the help of third parties like an egg donor or surrogate, they do that because they have tried other methods to help themselves grow their family that haven't worked. So with assisted reproduction, we have a set of medical procedures and rules and regulations that assist you where all other things may have failed you before that. One of my other favorite benefits is that it's available for anyone. Whether you're a married couple or an individual looking to grow your family, whether you're going to be the genetic parent of the child, meaning that you're going to use your own gametes, sperm or egg to create the embryo, or whether you need a donor for all of that, it's available to everyone. Another benefit is you control the timing. You know, one of the major things about becoming a parent is being ready to become a parent. Now, with assisted reproductive technologies, there's certainly a time frame that it takes to get through the process. So yeah, you'll have to wait a little while between when you start and when you have your beautiful little baby, but you control the timing for when you start. And that's a really valuable thing to have in mind when you're looking to grow your family. Another benefit is the health benefit to the child. Using assisted reproduction increases the chances of having a healthy baby. Why? Because when you're going through the process, most people elect to have their embryos screened and tested for health. So they want to make sure that the embryos that they're using in the transfer to the surrogate or in the transfer during IVF to the intended mother does not have any kind of chromosomal abnormalities or any issues that would likely pose health problems for the resulting child. So that's one more way that you can rest assured that you're a little closer to peace of mind in growing your family. Along those same lines, that also decreases the chance of miscarriage because when you're working with a healthy, viable embryo to begin with, we're confident that you'll have fewer problems that may result in a miscarriage. So all in all, assisted reproduction increases your chances of being able to have your baby. So with that being said, we kind of know the benefits, right? It's the answer to the question, can I have a baby? The answer is yes. With assisted reproduction, you can definitely work towards growing your family. But of course, like everything else in life, there's two sides to every coin. So let's look at the cons of assisted reproduction. But before we do, I want to ask you something. Are you getting anything out of this video? If so, go ahead and click that like button. That lets YouTube know that, hey, this might be some useful information for other people, and it shares it with others. So click the like button, and while you're down there, just subscribe. I mean, you're already right beside the button. Go ahead. I'll give you a second. Yeah, go ahead, do it. All right, let's jump into the cons of assisted reproduction. First, let's talk about a multiples pregnancy. Using assisted reproduction often increases the chances that you could have multiples. And that in and of itself is not a bad thing. After all, you could still have twins without going through the IVF process. But the important thing to remember is that the more fetuses a woman is carrying during pregnancy, the higher the risk of the pregnancy. So, if at all possible and to the extent possible, we want to minimize the risk to the woman who will be carrying the child. So that's something to keep in mind when you're going through assisted reproduction. In surrogacy arrangements, one of the things we do in the legal contract for surrogacy is we make sure that we're all clear on how many embryos we're looking to have transferred into the surrogate's uterus. Because of course, one embryo being implanted in the uterus could result in one fetus and one child being born. It could also result in twins. So if we're talking about transferring more than one embryo, then we definitely increase the likelihood that the surrogate will be carrying multiples. So in the legal contract for surrogacy, we always make sure to address that and make sure that each party to that contract understands how many embryos we're going to transfer. So on the day that we go in for the transfer, there are no surprises. You're not walking in there saying, but I thought we were doing one, and then the parents are like, but I'd love to do 5. You don't want any confusion like that. So make sure you address that right up front, especially in surrogacy arrangements. Talk about it in that contract. The second risk or con that we can talk about is the risk of ectopic pregnancies. Now, that's simply a pregnancy that implants outside of the uterus. In general, in pregnancies, there's about a 1% chance that a pregnancy could end up being ectopic pregnancy. But for IVF-related pregnancies, that number increases to about 4.9%. The reasons for these type of complications vary. It could be because of abnormalities in fallopian tubes. It could be because of previous endometriosis treatments. It could even be for other reasons. But the matter is, the increased chances are also there when you're dealing with IVF or assisted reproduction related pregnancies. Another one of the potential cons is the risk of miscarriage or early deliveries. And I know you're thinking, Corlandos, you just told me that we don't have to think about miscarriage as much, at least because we're working through assisted reproduction. And yes, I did say that, but we also have to consider and remember that working through assisted reproduction also increases the risk of a multiples pregnancy. And with carrying more fetuses, you also bring yourself into the risk bubble of an early delivery and even miscarriage. There's also the emotional toll, and that's sort of a con of assisted reproduction. This is for a couple of reasons. Assisted reproduction often makes what some people think is the impossible become possible, and with that become high expectations. And you think, well, if I'm doing this process, absolutely nothing can go wrong, right? And the answer is wrong. We do a lot with regards to medicine, science, and technology, but when it comes to the end of the day of who's born and who's not born, that's a little bit outside of our pay grade. We don't control that. So we control as much as we can with the science and the medicine, but the rest is out of our hands. So it's not a 100% guarantee that when you're going through the assisted reproduction process, that it will result in a beautiful, healthy baby, but we know that it does increase our chances. So with that, there is the emotional component of tempering our expectations and understanding how to deal with a potential failure in the assisted reproduction journey. There's also the emotional aspect of going through family building in such an unconventional way. You'll have people ask you, well, what is that like? Someone else is carrying your baby, and you have to be prepared emotionally to handle that. Not only the outside attention, but what you'll be going through. Let's say you're working with a donor or a surrogate. You'll have to think about, well, if this child doesn't share my genetics, how does that make me feel? If I'm not carrying the baby physically myself, how will that make me feel? And I always advise all of my clients to speak with a mental health professional to sort through some of these things that would not normally be natural to think about, but because you're growing your family in this way, it's important that you prepare yourself emotionally, financially, physically, in all types of ways. Then another potential downside of assisted reproduction, let's face it, is the cost. None of this stuff is free, unfortunately. There are some programs that you can seek for assistance. There are some people who would do pro bono work, both on the medical side, the legal side. You can even find a surrogate who'd be willing to carry altruistically or without getting compensated for it. But at the end of the day, there are going to be medicines that you have to purchase. There will be health insurance that needs to be in place. There will even be life insurance policies that it would be prudent to take out if you're working with a surrogate. And there are all kinds of costs. So you have to bear that in mind. That's a potential downside, that it does cost money. If you're looking for ways to offset the cost or wondering how you can get help paying for the assisted reproduction process, go to my channel and check out some of my other videos where I talk about how to deal with the cost of assisted reproduction. Last but not least, one of the cons that I'd like to talk about are the ethics and laws. Everyone has their own opinion about everything. And surrogacy, egg donation, sperm donation, assisted reproduction is no different. So when it comes to the ethics of the matter, we have to think about public opinion and what the law says is legal or illegal. So that's another one of the things you'll have to decide when you're working on your assisted reproduction journey. Where do you live? Are the laws in your area friendly to assisted reproduction, or are there complications? And you really have to search your own heart and mind, so to speak, to think about how you feel about the process in general. Again, I always lean back on the mental health professionals and say, talk to somebody. Think these things through. It's often an amazing way to grow your family, but it shouldn't be jumped into hastily. Think the whole thing through. Now, pros and cons aside, assisted reproductive technologies offer a great way to grow your family when there may not be any other options. But the important thing to keep in mind is do your research. Do your research, talk to the professionals around you who can tell you and walk you through all of the pros and cons for your specific situation so that you can make a smart, informed decision on how to grow your family through assisted reproduction. And if you're looking at the surrogacy process, I have something for you. It's my free seminar on assisted reproductive technology specific to surrogacy and how to do it the smart way. I call it the surrogacy path. So if you click the link below, it'll take you to my free training where you can learn all about how to grow your family through surrogacy the smart way. See you in the next episode.